Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our exciting webinar, How to Take Your Business Global, where we will be hearing from our expert panel of speakers who have a vast range of experience on today's topic. So I'm Sophie and I'm going to be your host today. I'm part of the commercial team here at Osome. We're the UK market leaders in e-commerce accounting, and we provide bookkeeping and accounting services to online sellers and businesses of any industry. So we're going to be running some polls throughout the webinar today. If you could just answer those, that would be great. And also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please do pop those in the chat box and our panelists will answer them during the live Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. So to introduce our panelists, I'm joined today by James Butland, Vice President at Airwallex, Alex Wyatt, Global Project Manager at simplyvat.com, Tony Hughes, who is the co-founder and commercial director at City Curator, and he's a key part of the Global Entrepreneurship Programme at the Department of International Trade. And finally, we've got our very own Alexei Potemkin, who is the UK Managing Director at Osome. So I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves and their companies a little bit further. So James, would you like to start us off?
Perfect. Thank you, Sophie. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Butland. So I'm based in London at Airwallex, and we are a global payments firm which really helps UK and European businesses expand globally. So through our platform, we can give European companies bank accounts all around the world, in the US, in Australia. So when they're selling their goods online on e-commerce platforms, they can collect funds and pay out funds locally as if they were a local company. I've been with Airwallex for about 4 years now, from when it was a very small Series A startup to where we are today. And I look after our strategic partnerships with banks and schemes. So that's me.
Thanks, James. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Alex Wyatt. I'm the project manager at Simply VAT, really tackling all of the big kind of external changes that are happening, such as the EU VAT reform, and the impacts of Brexit and how this impacts companies as they trade globally. So yeah, you probably may have seen me talk before, but if not, it's nice to meet you. Simply VAT, we offer international VAT services, which includes VAT registrations and ongoing compliance, specifically aimed at e-commerce sellers trading internationally, so we can handle EU VAT, Canadian, GST, and PST, and then also have connections all around the world. So if you need any assistance, happy to help with that. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Tony, please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Sophie. My name is Tony Hughes. I'm co-founder of City Curator. We basically work with companies who are going global around the world. We also work with lots of inward investment agencies, who are those agencies, both national and local, at local level, usually city-led, that trying to attract companies such as the ones who might be listening to us now into their city region from across the world. And we're looking to make that process easier by giving companies access to data and insights that match what their requirements are. So it matches what sector they're in, what industry they're in, what stage they're at, with opportunities in different locations. So whether you're raising finance or, like most of you, looking to access new markets, how do you do that? How best do you do that? Giving people access to that, their fingertips. That's what we do.
Great, thank you. And Alexei, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and such a great company to be in. Glad to see all of you guys here. I'm Alexei. I'm looking after the UK business of Osome. At Osome, what we're trying to do, we are trying to solve the admin back office functions for small business owners, starting with company incorporation, continuing to like accounting, bookkeeping, and analytics. We are combining robots and humans. So like we are automating as much of the tasks as possible, but we also adding this human touch into the loop so that we are able to provide the full scope of accounting and bookkeeping services to our clients. We are focusing on the e-commerce segment as well. For the e-commerce segment, like there are several things that we provide. The first one, we try to make the process as effortless as possible. So we, for example, consolidating all the data from all the different platforms that the e-commerce sellers are using and putting them into like one coherent like accounting software. We also are like one of the best e-commerce expert accountants on the market. So we also provide the expertise and the consultations with like our internal in-house accountants. And then in addition to that, we provide the insights into the business. So we don't stop just on the compliance part of accounting, but we also try to make use of the financial data that we are collecting and that we are sending to HMRC so that the entrepreneurs can use this data to make business decisions.
Great, thanks, Alexi. So let's kick things off. Let's go into the first point of the agenda. And the first question, well, the first topic is, what is globalization? So I'm going to pick on you, Alexi. Do you want to start us off with what that means to you and what it means to Osome as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, Osome started out more than 3 years ago out of Singapore, initially focusing on Singaporean market. And even while working in Singapore, we already saw the impact of globalization, if we are talking about the socio-economical trend, right? Because we, like a lot of our clients in Singapore, for example, are foreign clients, so the entrepreneurs from somewhere else who want to, for example, start business in Asia, and they would open the company in Singapore. So like we are working with international entrepreneurs from early on, and then obviously we've also expanded into the UK and then into Hong Kong, and because like we see that there is a need for internalization, for globalization. Like there are a lot of entrepreneurs who start the business in their home country, and then at some point they either reach some limitations in there, so they want to expand, and or they are looking into additional growth levers, and then they enter foreign markets as well. So yeah, I guess for the purposes of today's webinar, like we would like to look into the globalization as a trend for the businesses going global. What are their needs? Like why are they doing it? Like what are the things that they should be keeping in mind while they're doing it, and like how all the companies on this call can support them on their journey.
Great. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Please speak up.
Well, I suppose with globalization, what's interesting now is the globalization accelerated, didn't it? Because we had more and more flights, so people could go to different countries a lot quicker in the past, and now we've got much better internet connections pretty much everywhere around the world. That means you can do a lot of this remotely, and of course with COVID, it means you've had to do that remotely. So globalization in terms of the exchange of ideas and not just the arrival of people at airports is become the currency, hasn't it? It's all about knowledge and access to the right information at the right time. Hence why we're doing this. I should think the new globalization is, how do we ensure that everyone has access to the same means of information and knowledge, or in COVID cases, the vaccine, right? So that everyone can benefit from that. So the pros and cons to it, but I think generally it's a good idea that people should all have access to as much information as they require, or knowledge that they require, whether you're learning at school level or university level, or if you're learning how your product or service can fit best into a different market, because it might not be the market that you're in, and certainly that's the case with a lot of the entrepreneurs and founders that we work with.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think globalization and digitalization go hand in hand. I think 50 years ago, if you're a UK-based company and you wanted to set up in Singapore, you would have to get on a flight, go there, hire people. And nowadays, you can sell your products in an afternoon all around the world. You know, the borders to doing business are so much broader now, and I think that's one. As Tony mentioned, that's one thing which really compressed over the past 18 months with COVID is, you know, I live in the countryside, and even the local butcher here now has a website, and they would never have had a website, you know, 2 years ago, because why would they need one, right? They got all of their traffic through footfall. But you could, you know, buy their products from Timbuktu now. So I think that's one big thing which has really changed throughout COVID, is this move online, this move to digitalization. And it means that where you may have just sold your products or goods locally in the UK or even in Europe, you can now sell them all around the world. You know, it's much easier to do business than it was even 5 years ago.
I think like the big theme around it all is really opportunity. When you say globalization, I think opportunity. There are a lot of like I haven't said a lot of downfalls. There are downfalls to trading internationally, risks that you need to consider and so on. But I think the opportunities and the access to different markets and people, whether that's digital or, you know, just being able to reach your physical products worldwide, I think that, yeah, globalization just, yeah, screams opportunity. So I find that quite exciting. As we, you know, even as simply that, as we enter new markets. But yeah, just even being able from our side, you know, when we started up our business, it was, you know, we didn't really put any money into marketing, and it was a load of word of mouth, and a lot of people from around the world then started, you know, talking about us, and it ended up being, you know, and we ended up serving 70 different countries, all with minimal kind of ad spend and so on. So it is quite exciting how much, how much smaller the world seems now that so much has, there's so much digital, sides to business, and being able to access so many different markets and people by a click of a button, essentially.
I think you're right. I think that the only thing I'd quickly add, thinking about it, is that although we talk about obviously doing things remotely now and virtually, I think there's still a huge amount of benefit from being places physically. And it reminds me of, I was working with a South Korean company at the moment this week, and they've managed to get one of the co-founders out here. And so we're arranging various introductions for him into his market space, because I think it's also very important, of course, to understand the culture in which you're selling into, whether that's on a consumer brand or whether it's direct to business. And a lot of that can't be done remotely, because you don't pick things up. You don't pick up human cues as much. You're not able to go into deep dives. The call might drop, so you might miss something important. So I think it's still very important that you do it physical and digitally. But I think obviously with concerns around the environment now and carbon footprint and everything else, I think people are starting to think more deliberately before they move to a new destination, before they move into a new market. And there are tools like our own plug that you can use to do that, and practical tools like everyone else who's talking on the panel to help you do the practical moves and the practical acts of conducting business in a location more effectively.
Yeah, but I think you're completely right on face-to-face communication, and it's one thing. I mean, this is face-to-face. This is in real life, and I think this would be so much easier if we all sat in a room, because, like you say, it's easier to have a conversation when everyone's together and you can read, you know, cues off people, but also understand, you know, how people react, and also really understand the nuances of doing business in a new cultural, new territory. We as a business, we're in, I think, 17 locations, but none of those locations are the same, and we can't do the same thing in a new market which we do in our home market. So, but I think that's one big thing we've missed throughout COVID, and when we haven't been able to travel, is really that face-to-face and making that connection. And you get so much more done in a day being next to someone than you do in a week remotely. So I think that's going to be the big challenge post-COVID, is how that balance is struck between being in person and being remote.
Great, thank you for that, guys. And sort of continuing on, James, when you mentioned about thinking about the cultural side, what would you say are the key considerations when you are looking into globalization, both into and out of the UK? So culture, what else would you say there is?
Yeah, I think if you go into any new country or new territory, you really have to look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. You can't take your home products into that country think it's going to be the same. Airwallex was originally a Australian company founded in Melbourne, but the Australian and the UK markets are similar, but also they're completely different. You know, the UK markets are a lot bigger, and you know, it was looking at how does your product fit into that market. I think the best bit of advice, you know, we can give, or that we found, is really you have to talk to clients or potential clients and really understand what they want. The UK is quite, I would say, quite unique in Europe, and we've seen that in terms of fintech and number of tech companies based out of the UK compared to some other European countries. I think it's a very sort of early adopter culture. So people are a bit more happy to take a risk with new products or services. But yeah, the biggest advice I'd be would talk to clients or potential clients, and don't think just because it works in your home market, it can work in this market. You really have to reevaluate from day one what you're going to do in the market.
Great. Does anyone have any other?
So much true. I can just like say that's very similar to what we saw when taking Osome from Singapore to the UK, right? So like you look at the similarities of the market and you kind of think that, okay, it looks very similar. We just probably can copy paste the strategies and tactics and the like operational things that worked in your home market into the new market. And yeah, like what you discover on the way is that not that simple, right? So the marketing strategy that worked initially wouldn't work in your home country. Even the product, the value proposition that you are selling and that you have in your home country would not necessarily be the one that applies to the new market. And like we see a lot of it, especially in fintech, right? So there are a few of the European companies like digital banks who were trying to enter the US market, and like whether in Europe, like the penetration of debit cards is quite high, and like a lot of people are using debit cards. When you enter the US market, like you'll see that no one cares about debit cards, right? And like you gotta have credit product in there. And yeah, if like we are talking about B2C, the similar thing happening in B2B as well, right? So like however similar market wouldn't be, like you still gotta do a lot of work in market research and stuff, and sometimes even the market research is not enough. So like one of the things that I think Tony mentioned, right? So like you just gotta go there and actually like experience for yourself like how people do business there, like what are the acceptable ways, what are the patterns, and then like you will see what do people use and how your product should be different when you are copying it and like getting into the new territories.
Yeah, I think culture is all important. It really is. I mean, I've worked with many. To give extreme examples, I mean, I've worked with there's a Japanese company that springs to mind that came to London. They set up and recruited 80 people, right, and then didn't listen to any of the people it recruited in terms of what we should do next in this particular market. They were already. This is usually the case with many successful companies in their own domestic markets. They think that model is going to work across different borders, especially if they get a bit of traction in international markets, and they think they can easily replicate that. They go to the time and trouble of recruiting some really intelligent, bright people who understand their local markets, and then they don't listen to them. It's a hierarchical structure thing. It's also a cultural thing. China does something similar, where those people in that hierarchy want to own that relationship when it comes to managing up. And then the managers don't get to hear the very valuable information about how to expand in that particular marketplace. Large companies do it too, from the US too. I've had experiences with companies that rhyme with Google that do exactly the same thing in terms of they don't know the market. And they guess, or they give the responsibility to one person for that entire country who might not have had great experience in that country, and then they come up with a plan, they implement that plan, and then they blame it on someone else. And I think the ones that are smarter is where the founder or the founding team, the people who built these companies, are very close to all those relationships, especially going into new markets. Now I tend to get co-founders to come over and do it because they're connected right with the people making the decisions, and they understand, because they built it in their own country to begin with, how to overcome those problems and to embrace those challenges, and not just pass them down the line to a management team that doesn't know how to handle that or is fearful of it. And that's how you engage with that type of culture. And I've had it the other way, trying to get British companies to go global. You know, it's the same kind of problem. You know, you've got it. Say if you're doing business in China, there isn't a China button that you can press and you're live in China. You know, it's about building relationships over time. And you might have to do 10 favors before you get one in return, you know, because that's how you build a relationship there. You know, it's understanding that you're going into a different country. They do business in different ways. And a lot of people don't get that, especially if they've been very successful in their own markets. They tend not to want to change that model until it's too late.
I laugh at the China thing because once upon a time, years ago, we tried to, we were like, China's going to be the next market for us. Let's do it. And obviously we get there and you have to reset everything that you thought was true culturally, because like from, coming from the UK, going over into China, is just everything was completely different. And yeah, definitely we were naive going in, even though we had local Chinese people that we hired and so on. It was just completely different, I think, from like a management point of view, trying to look at how to go to break into the country, just because it was such a different, like exactly what you said, Tony. You can't take what you've done in one country and replicate it in the next. You have to really adapt your services, your language, everything that needs to change in order to adapt to that specific market. And I think that was definitely a big learning curve. I think going especially into somewhere so culturally different like China, I would suggest going there and actually meeting the people, and taking that time to build up the relationships with the people.
It's part of the fun, isn't it?
It is.
Part of the fun of doing,
I loved it.
It's part of the fun of doing and making that leap. That's the most interesting part, isn't it? I mean, I've been going to China for over 20 years. And it's changed a lot, and people talk about it as if it's one country. It's not. It's a civilization that's been artificially constrained into this national identity, and it's fascinating going to all different parts of it, because it's like going to Europe. We're going to Europe, and it's all these different countries, all their different practices. And try and manage that from one place. You can't. You go to one territory, trying to find that right location that's the best fit, and the one that's the best way to experiment with all your new processes in your market is the key to doing that. And I think companies have to learn that, like creating a tiger team to address a key problem, whether that's a technical or a business process one or a monetization problem, that you have to do the same when you're addressing a new market, and give up the idea that you're going to make money immediately. Invest a bit of time and money. Give your team time to learn about that new marketplace as you're expanding into it. Of course, with e-commerce is entirely different. You can already sell stuff in there, but there's still going to be problems in terms of import and export, etc.
Yeah, I think we had a very similar experience. So Airwallex was founded in Melbourne, but majority of our staff now are in Shanghai and Hong Kong. And one of our lead investors was Tencent, back when we did our Series A in 2017. And so we've kind of built the product out of China and Australia, and then expanded into Europe and the US. And the point on hiring local experts is completely right. Our team that we hired in Shanghai, a lot of them had come from European and US companies who wanted to move into China, but wanted to direct it from the US or Europe. And it's a completely wrong approach. You need to find people locally on the ground who understand that market, who really know how to succeed and how to build those businesses. And as a tech company, we have one technology platform, but we have to adapt it locally to local demands, local clients, what they want. China is a great example in terms of customer service. Customers in China expect an answer within minutes, seconds, and we don't have that sort of culture here in Europe. We're happy to wait, until the end of the day or next business day for an answer to our questions. So I think understanding those nuances, but what you said, Alex, by getting the team right is completely right. You have to make sure the people you are hiring are local, understand that market, and have done it before.
Great, thanks for that. So sort of going back to what you said, Tony, about how would you decide that a new market is definitely the right fit for you? So how would you sort of decide this is where we're going to go next? What would you consider in making that decision?
Well, I think it depends on, of course, what sector that you're in, what industry you're in. And some of what you might be selling is not easy to test online in a virtual marketplace. If you can, that's great, and then you can expand out of that. I think the key is doing your research and making sure you've got enough data to back up what might be common knowledge in your own personal network. I think a lot of companies just rely on their own network. So someone might say, well, I'm going to this market. Do I know anyone else? Whether it's on LinkedIn friendship, which is usually intangible, or whether it's actual friendship where you've got people who've had that experience of going into a marketplace. And then you ask them how they did it. And of course, it might not always be the same thing because it might be in a different time. It might be a different sector. So do your research. And obviously that's what we do. But also, all these lots of different agencies that there exist, both national agencies in the UK, you've got Department for International Trade, you've got all the different city agencies, like in London, you've got London and Partners. Around the world, Singapore has it, Austrade has it. They all have information about how to land best in their regions, but they also have information on sectors and industries and clusters that you might want to land in. Because you might, for example, if you're going B2B and you need to know where the biggest advanced manufacturing centre is in the UK in terms of potential client base, it makes sense to go there, wouldn't it? Because that's where your clients are going to be. Or if you're raising money, then you're going to go to London because it raises more money and it has lots of VCs sitting in it than anyone else. So it depends on what you want to do. Do your research. There's lots of information out there. Some of it is out of date and unreliable. Information sources like ours are not. We're all up to date. I'm constantly plugging, aren't I? Sorry. But yes, do your research, get your insights, speak to people who've been there if you're lucky enough to have that network, and if not, reach out. I think that's what I found about founders generally and businesses who've been and made that leap. They're very good with their time. And they want to share. They want to share about lessons, often enough lessons that they've learned on the hard way. They'll tell you those lessons, but also good things that you can do. And I think the key is finding those local people initially. Who can help me. Like if I'm going into China, like I help many games companies from the UK go into China to find the right company to work with, because there it's more about joint ventures and possibilities there. Because you're never going to set up a team to understand that market very quickly. Start with a partnership. Maybe that's the best way into a particular market. Do I need to be setting up a company immediately? Maybe not. Maybe clever partnerships. Then I'll get a sense of a market, and then I might move later when I need to have boots on the ground. I need to account manage some relationships. I need to do something with more customer care. Then I need to because I've got more clients or end users there. So it depends on what stage you're at. But fortunately now, because we're all internet savvy, aren't we? And we all know how to search for things, and there are much better sources of information out there. But each region, wherever you are around the world, has its own trade promotion agency that's responsible for helping you go global. And on the other side, wherever you choose to land, they have a similar organization that's also want to attract you in. So you get two sources of information of people who want to help you, either with advice or expertise or time or money occasionally.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and just asking for help. There's so many free sources of information, and we saw it recently. So we've been building this company for 5 years now, and we're still learning every week, every month about what we've done wrong or what we're doing wrong, or how we can improve going forward. And post Brexit, we set up an office and went licensed in the Netherlands, and there was a huge amount of help, not only from sort of the UK teams like Tony mentioned, like DIT and London and Partners, but also from the Netherlands, the Dutch embassy, but also Amsterdam itself as a city wanted us to go there, and they helped us sort of set up and navigate and introduce us to the DNB, so we can meet the central bank, and I think use all those free sources of information. Ask for help because you don't know it all, and also just reach out to people. Like I still do a lot if I want to learn about. We're currently expanding into the Middle East. Our knowledge of the Middle East is very, very limited. So I'm speaking to other companies, speaking to founders, speaking to CEOs of local companies down there to really try and work out the market and where's best to land. So definitely ask for help, because people more than often not are willing to help. And if they don't and they say no, you've lost nothing, you know.
Alexi or Alex, do you have anything to add on that?
I think those are, some key tips. I would say maybe, if possible, if you're like an e-commerce business and you have the opportunity to kind of test various markets and see where you land, and then you can pick up and like choose key markets to start to enter into. Like if you're deciding on which market you want to go into first, definitely testing the markets is the best way, I would say, to enter into a market and select as well. But then asking for help and actually doing the research once you do have that main selection of which country you want to enter into. But yeah, I would say, like you said, even going into the EU, it's a big kind of place to tackle. You can't just say EU wide, and it's best just to look at it on an individual country. But the other thing is before you do enter into a specific market, it is important to look at more of the legal side of things as well. I'm looking from a tax perspective, a lot of businesses do end up entering into markets without thinking about the tax implications, and then they get caught out by the tax authorities, and you have to go back and fix all of these issues. So it's really important to make sure that if one of those people that you do ask for help from is someone from a legal point of view, whether that's compliance in terms of your products or compliance from like a tax or regulatory point of view as well. It's really, I would say, important to make sure that your products will be fine entering into those markets before you actually invest the time, seeing actually how to execute it after that.
Yeah, I would just add probably that, I guess, well, first of all, you got to separate kind of business strategy about the entry new market and like operations, tactical steps to do it, right? So on the business strategy part, probably the best thing is to look into your home country, right, and see what worked there and like why do you think it worked, right? So you probably already have some learnings and like some hypothesis to form about like what can work in the market you are entering, and then obviously look at the size of the potential market, look at the competition in there, and then like look at the in terms of like operational part, as Alex said, they look at the legal structure that you need to put in place to trade successfully in this market as well. So it boils down to the legal structure, to tax implications, both in this country and in your home country. And so, I agree. That's like one of the things that quite a few businesses, it's not that they overlook it, but like for quite a few businesses, it's like the legal part of it, the tax part of it, it's one of the things that stops them from entering the new market, especially like e-commerce businesses, for example, who usually don't have like large legal departments or large international expansion departments who can help them out to find the good structure. And they would just be scared of entering the new market because it looks like a lot of unknowns, and there, I guess, like the simplest advice is to talk to someone who knows the stuff, right? Like simple VAT, like Osome. We obviously helped out quite a few businesses, like hold their hands and help them out to expand into Europe successfully.
Great, thank you for that. And so do you guys have any learnings from your past experiences? Like, where would you say, where have you supported? Is there anything you would change? Anything you feel like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Like, and you think that someone might benefit from learning that? Alex, did you have anything specific you can think of?
Well, definitely going back. Oh wait, Alexi or Alex? Which
No,
one?
Alex.
Me. Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, going into China was definitely a a learning curve. And to be honest, it was one of my first countries that I'd ever even looked to enter into. And yeah, so working with people locally, I thought was useful, but to a point, you really did have to be on the ground and be able to understand the culture yourself, especially if you're managing that sort of that sort of expansion into the country. So I found that, yeah, quite enlightening, and definitely yeah, it kind of set the expectation. My favorite quote about especially working in China, but really working in general when going international, is adapt or die. And that's kind of stuck with me ever since then. And it's just being able to adapt so many different things, and that goes across the whole business organization as a whole. But yeah, it's quite it was quite exciting to be able to do it, and then learn so much. And although it wasn't the route that we ended up taking in the long run, I think doing a softer landing, not actually, like you said, like somebody's touched upon earlier, don't actually launch a company if you don't know what it's good. You got to walk before you can run. And I think hiring people locally and being able to test the market and kind of have those cutoff points as well to say, if you're not making you know, you kind of have to be realistic as well, how much investment you're going to put in terms of, until you just think, okay, it's not going to stick. And in case of China, it didn't work for us due to the culture of not wanting to technically comply, if that's the best way to say it. So it wasn't the best market to go into from a compliance point of view, but it was yeah, so it really just depends on your product as well. So it was a very enlightening experience.
Yeah, I mean, staying on China for a minute, because it's a great market to talk about. I suppose legal contracts mean nothing. So my advice would be get paid up front if you entirely can, because that takes a while. What else to learn? In Brazil, the working day is 3 hours. So make sure you get everything done either an hour in the morning, 11 to 12, or maybe a couple of hours in the afternoon, unless you've had a heavy lunch. So they get a lot done, but they do it in their time and pace. It's a different environment in the UK, that's for sure.
I think from my side, probably the thing I would suggest if you are launching a new market is do as much as you can from outside of the country before you start hiring locally and investing a lot of money on the ground in the market. What we offer via our platform is the ability to set up local bank accounts in 7-8 countries, so you can actually start doing business there locally. And maybe your hypothesis that your product or service will sell really well in the US isn't true, and you'll only find that out when you start, doing business there. But maybe it sells really well in Hong Kong, and then you can go out to Hong Kong, meet people, build that network, get that free advice, and then start to hire people locally. So I would say do as much as you can remotely until you actually see there's real demand in that market. And to Alex's point on the hiring thing, it's hire slow and fire fast. So, take your time to find the right people for your business. Don't rush into anything. Don't be pushed into anything. And if it doesn't work, then make sure you draw it to a close sooner rather than later. So I think a lot of businesses go into a country, hire a local team, and then just waste money, in that market if it doesn't fit for them. That would be sort of our key learnings.
I guess hiring advice applies both for your home market as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess from our point of view, like what experience shows, it like I would advise really like focus and have a dedicated resource to look after the expansion, right? So it's probably hard to do if you are like small e-commerce business with like just a few people, but maybe in this case dedicate some days a week or some time during your day to the expansion. If you have like several teams done, it would make sense to have one person responsible solely on this expansion, somebody who will be thinking about it 24/7, and somebody who will be managing all the like resources with regard to internal expansion. Because one of the things that we see often in like our clients' businesses as well is like people start thinking about it, they would develop the strategy of like what do they want to do, how they want to enter, and then they don't dedicate resources, then don't dedicate people to this project, and then obviously you have a lot of things going on in your home market, and like there are always lots of things to do, right? And then in this case, if you don't have the dedicated team or dedicated individual looking after this project, then obviously like in most of the cases, the project will be much longer than you anticipated, and then probably not that effective or efficient. It's from our side.
Yeah, I think that's all correct, and I always say there's the 6 things that all companies should do, but about 90% do not do when they're entering a new market. So one is detailed location research, cost of operation analysis, adapting your product offering, empowering your local teams, channel to market strategy, I'm going to find my market, and tapping into local networks. If you've got all of those covered, then you've got a much better chance of success.
We can all go home now. That was it. We are home, so never mind.
Just go downstairs to the sofa. Great. Well, thank you guys. Really great discussions. So I've got a couple of questions from our attendees. And while we're answering these, if anyone has any more questions, please pop them in the chat on your screen. So let's get started. So the first question is from Mark Beresford. How important are employers of record, in brackets, professional employer organizations, in helping companies expand and hire internationally in new markets? And do you see many examples of companies doing this? It seems to be very common in the US to ensure compliance, but not sure about other global markets.
I could speak on this because we actually do use it in certain markets. So as a company, because we need local language speakers and whatnot, we do hire internationally, and we have used some employers of records in specific countries. They can be quite pricey, so I would really kind of check different kind of routes and how many people you are actually going to be hiring in that specific market. If it's just one person, you could go down the employers of record kind of route, or if you can look into setting up your own payroll system in those specific countries. We've done both, depending on the country, and we've hired people and kind of Portugal, Czech Republic, Germany, and so on. So yeah, I think it really depends on your individual company and really how much you want to spend and how much you actually want to be doing of like organizing it. If you want to set up the payroll and you have a finance team that can assist with that sort of thing, then by all means that might be the cheaper and easier method in the long run. But definitely, if you don't want to be managing any of the local legal side, the payroll, anything like that, or if you sell a specific product that you do need someone in that local country that is, for example, they need to be employed by the local country, or a company in the local country, then the professional employer organizations are the route to go. So yeah, it really, I think, would be business specific, but they're not a bad way to start out, I would say. And then in the long term, depending on what your long-term strategy is, then shifting over onto the the more localized approach from our experience.
Great, thank you. Anyone?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, definitely, the employer record is very good way to get up to speed quickly, right? So like if you are just starting and like you care about the speed of entering the new market, then the employer record is definitely like one way to go. Because like if you don't go through that route, then you would need to set up the company, set up the payroll system, consult with HR lawyers to understand like what the contract should look like, what the benefits should look like, and all of those stuff that you have your kind of HR team doing in your home country, right? You just need to replicate in the new country. So in this case, the employer record is definitely one of easiest thing to go to set up quickly. But then, as Alex said, they become very, very expensive like while you are increasing your headcount there. And we see that like in a lot of the cases you start with employer record, and then like after hitting certain number of employees, it makes sense to add somebody who will be looking after the admin part of your new market. And then like in this case, you'll just like switch everything to in-house.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on to the next one. Kashif asks, for a B2B software as a service business, what steps do you suggest for initial customer acquisition in a new country? And then in brackets, online ads, cold calling, email. Those are just a couple of examples.
I think it definitely pays to be as targeted as you can be. And I know in the UK at least, there are a number of agencies that help you get that traction initially. They go on a commission basis. So if you don't want to put a team in there straight away, you don't have that cost base, that you can work with agencies that, especially if you've got a very well defined service and it's everything set up on the back end, then you can work with an agency to onboard people based on a commission. I know quite a few in the UK. I don't know if you want me to plug them here. But there are those people who specialize in software as a service businesses.
I think, of those options listed, I think the other thing is not a great answer, but it is just trial and error. You have to try, a bit of everything and see what sticks in the market. I've known of companies which have become fintech unicorns in the UK, who 5 years ago were handing out flyers in Shoreditch. It's a very low tech way of gaining users, but I think if you're new into the market, you do just have to have a go and try, see what works, see what doesn't work. As Tony says, you can pay a firm to do that for you, but if you are sat there thinking this product will really fly in the US, then all those things you mentioned, cold calling, email, it's getting those first customers. Even if you get one customer, that's a huge achievement, because it's a customer you didn't have a year before. So yeah, I would say it's not going to be easy, but it is just trial and error and seeing what works in that market. Again, ask for help. Speak to people who've done it before, who've been there in that market. What's the one that the people in the US hate cold calling? Should not even bother with it. And I think it comes back down to asking the people with that experience.
To Kashif's just asked me another question there on the chat. Likes of, to James's point, DIT have a list of commercial partners that they vet, which is freely available on their website. There are agencies, particularly in your sector, I would advise B2B, software as a service, sales agencies. Use J&B Associates and James Blakemore, because I've used them many times for referrals myself, and they're great. And they do a lot of work with likes of DIT and London and Partners as well, and they've been doing it for a long time. So that might be someone you could try, but there are, as the BBC would say, there are other agencies available.
If I may add, I would encourage, whenever entering into the new market, especially for B2B SaaS, one of the things that you want to do, want to focus your attention in the initial period is learning, right? So you want to learn as much as possible about your potential clients and about how should you craft your product. So in this case, one of the greatest advice I heard is don't be afraid to do things that don't scale. right? So it shouldn't be a scalable solution from the get-go. Try hopefully you're entering the market where you already have some network, and most probably if you ask around, you will have somebody from this market, and just try to get the first of those clients as quickly as possible, with the ways that wouldn't be usually scalable. But I would encourage to do it yourself, and to be able to maintain this relationship with the client, to see the firsthand what's working, what's not, so that then you can craft your value proposition to be best fit to this particular market.
The only thing I would add, and I don't know how relevant it would be for a very small business, but I do think it could be, is any partnership. So if you are partnered with someone and say here in the UK, and you are selling it that's going really successfully, and maybe they are trading internationally, maybe the partnership with them might be able to assist you to go abroad and start getting those initial acquisitions. But yeah, I think partnerships can go a long way. Even if you can't give so much back at the beginning, it is all about value add and going back and forth. And trying to figure out what the partner wants is not always a lead that they want. It could be something else in a way that you can add value. So yeah, I would have those discussions and try and form any partnerships in the markets that you want, or for the companies that are already trading in those markets that maybe have the same sort of customers that you want.
Great, thank you guys. Kashif also asked about the 6 steps that Tony mentioned earlier. So just to let you know, he has written those down in the questions part, if you wanted to get a copy of those. But also, we will be sending out a copy of this webinar to everyone via email, so you will get a copy of that as well. So any tips, you will be able to access them later. I've got one more question as well, and Tim asks, what is the best strategy on Shopify for translating your website? So for local markets in Germany or Norway, for example.
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, I don't know. So that's why you've got a stunned silence, I think.
Yeah.
Look, I think, for Shopify aside, if you need to translate your product into a new market, whether that be your website or whether that be your e-commerce store, I think look at tools you can access relatively cheaply. So lots of freelancing websites, you better find local translators on there. You don't need to hire someone locally to translate a website. And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about, before sinking a lot of money into a new country or a new region, do get your MVP or minimum viable product ready for the market, ready for the German market. So go on Fiverr, find a German translator and ask them to translate it for you at a low cost. That's the only advice I can offer there from my side.
Yeah, have a holistic strategy. So it's part of your whole market entry strategy for that country. So, translation is fine and everything else, but, is that entwined with the local marketing agency who knows the best way to market that across Germany? What keywords you're using. You can't just replicate the same language in a different country. I mean, sometimes you maybe can, but a lot of times you can't. So make sure that's integrated with you can just hire a translator, of course, if it's dead simple, if you've just got a widget, and I'm selling a widget into those places. But you also got to know, what channels, what sites, like LinkedIn. They have their own equivalent of LinkedIn in Germany, for example. So if you're marketing out through LinkedIn, you'd want to also do it through the German equivalent. That's where the German rates of subscribers for LinkedIn is down compared to all the other big countries in Europe. So just again, going back to what we said before, understand your market, make sure it's part of a more holistic approach.
But one thing that we did learn, another fintech I worked at, is the website. As Tony says, you couldn't have the same homepage for every market in Europe. So in Germany specifically, there's something called the Tuft mark, which is like, it's like which in the UK, to say it's a verified service or verified product. And that carried a lot of weight in the market on having that on the homepage. So yeah, I would look at, aside from the actual language, are there other things which you need to have on that website to make it relevant for local customers? I think it was called the Tough Mark. Don't quote me on that. I may have completely imagined that. I think
James, this has been recorded.
Yeah,
Do everything with a disclaimer.
exactly.
Okay, I'm just going to see if we've got any more questions. Yeah, we've just had another question come through. Thank you, Mark. So he says, on website localizations, DIT's internationalization strategy funding or local growth company economic development agency might be available to help pay for some localization. Okay, this is not a question.
It's a useful comment from Mark.
A useful comment, yeah. I should have.
And the ITAs, by the way, for
Yeah.
any companies listening who are based in the UK, are an invaluable source. If you're looking to go to an overseas market, start with looking at for your local international trade advisor. I think they're all based regionally around the UK, and they're fantastic.
Great, thank you. And then Sophie's asked, what are the early indicators or signs that you can expand globally?
Well, again, it depends on what you're doing, but especially if you're selling stuff online, if you're getting traction and you're getting customers in other markets and you're getting a spike, or if you're just getting subscribers or people viewing what you're doing on a marketing basis in one country or another. I've heard lots of different companies and clients get surprised at where they're picking up interest from a customer base. And the last one was a company I was working with in Bristol, was a games company who discovered, unbeknownst to them, and they certainly never marketed it as such or intended it as such, but 50% of their revenues over the previous month were coming from Japan. They were like, we don't even know about the Japan market. And then they were like, we need to go to Japan. How do we go to Japan? And do more there. It took them about a year, but now they've got an office in Osaka. But what the game dynamic, which is quite unique to the Japanese market and how it played, just took Japan by storm. They just went through no marketing from their own point of view, but because the gaming groups are so well connected, and things can go viral very quickly, it took the Japan market by surprise. Again, it wasn't a market they thought, because there wasn't a market there for the type of game that they were doing, because the type of game they were producing just wasn't in Japan. So often enough, you can go to markets where there is no market for you seemingly at the moment, but the fact that you're developing a new or innovative piece of content or entertainment or product means that it might be the right market for you. So if you can and obviously games have got great platforms that you can just post on, whether you're selling it via mobile or PC. So if you can get traction remotely, just look at your numbers. Make sure you've got a really good data team that actually looks at the data you get back and provides real insights back to the decision-making teams up the tree.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any extra sort of tips on when to sort of take their business global? Anything else they would like to add to that?
Sorry, I'll just say also, don't go somewhere just because they offer incentives.
Oh, you've got to make that now.
Don't make that the only decision. Pick incentive. I can get X amount per job. There has to be a reason, because also those agencies don't really want you to do that, because it has to make sense why you're going there, whether it's for talent or whether it's for market access and size.
Yeah, and I think in terms of timing, it really depends on the data in terms of what you're seeing. So if you can, from your home market, you sell a product online, and like Tony says, if you see a lot of traffic from the US or from Japan, you've got a good inclination that people there want to buy the product. So test it out from your home country, see if people want to buy the product, do as much as you can, and then launch in that market. But don't be pushed into anything. Don't be rushed into anything. I think as soon as that you start seeing those data points come through, that's when you should go for it. And don't just go because your competitors have gone. There might be a myriad of other reasons why they're there. A lot of companies over the years have grown up through acquisition and buying out local companies, and they ended up in a country which maybe wasn't naturally their home market. So just be aware of that when you're expanding. Is you need to work out what's right for your product, and you need to look at that in terms of the data rather than where you feel you should be.
Yeah, and use. Sorry,
No.
I was going to fill a vacuum. So use strategic partners very well. I mean, I know lots of companies who will look for investors, not so much for the money, but the fact that they've got reach or a portfolio that have already done what you want to do in terms of expanding into global markets, especially global markets like we've already just mentioned in Asia, that might be really difficult to go into. If you can get expertise like that involved in your organization without actually paying them because they come with high salaries through strategic partners or investors, then that's a great way of doing it.
Okay, great. Right, so do we have any more questions? I'll just give it a minute or so to see if anyone has one more question. Let's have a look. No more burning questions. Okay. Right, so that's the end of the Q&A portion, so thank you very much. As I said, we will be sending out a copy of the webinar to everyone via email, and thank you very much to all of our panelists. Now, just before we go, do you have anything, any offers that you have for our attendees today that you would like to tell us about?
Well, we've opened up our site, which exists at the moment, which is going to change soon to take advantage of the data that's on there at the moment. That's all free. So we've got data on 27 cities around Europe and 11 particular markets that it relates to, mainly across software and tech and media.
Yeah, from our side, airwallets.com, have a look. It's free to sign up. And that there's no sort of subscription, so you can have a look at the website, play around with the different products and the features. And like I say, this afternoon you can create bank accounts in 7 countries around the world, and the ability to collect and send funds by the close of business today. So yeah, it's all there on the website, airwallets.com. Please do have a look.
If you're an e-commerce business, we are offering free Pan-EU registrations if you're selling on Amazon. So until October. So if you need registrations in any of those markets, give us a shout.
I guess our offer is still £100 off of your first month if you would like to sign up for our e-commerce special accounting and bookkeeping services with monthly with access to free consultations with your dedicated accountants and zero effort to consolidate all the information from the different platforms you are selling. So just go to osome.com and mention that you've watched this webinar and claim your £100 off.
Great.
I think you're going to share all our websites, information, everything else on you. I think Sophie is typing furiously as we speak.
Yeah, so Sophie's going to send out, there's another Sophie, not just me, it's very confusing. Sophie is going to send out all the websites, so everyone that's attended will get a copy of the webinar, as I said, and also all of the information about our panelists and partners today. So I think that wraps everything up. So thank you so much for attending, and thank you very much to the panelists. It's been amazing to learn some really great tips and tricks, and yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much again.